Somos Editorial y Librerías Piedra Santa, 5 generaciones contribuyendo a la educación y formación docente en Guatemala. Fundado en 1947 por Julio y Oralia Piedra Santa, pioneros en la elaboración de material didáctico bajo las técnicas de aprendizaje más innovadoras, según las exigencias de cada época. Somos una editorial 100% guatemalteca reconocida a nivel internacional, que ha publicado textos escolares, obras de literatura infantil, juvenil y para adultos, apoyando siempre a los autores guatemaltecos y centroamericanos. Dentro de nuestros servicios podemos destacar editorial, canal de librerías, distribución y venta de libros de texto a centros educativos y puntos de venta, edición, diseño y diagramación de libros, servicios generales de impresión, offset y digital. Y de la mano con la tecnología, apoyamos al docente por medio de sistemas avanzados como lo son Blink Learning y nuestro software propio, Crocs. Nuestro compromiso es incidir en la transformación de la sociedad a través de productos y servicios de calidad, entre los que destacan libros educativos, talleres y conferencias impartidos por destacados profesionales nacionales e internacionales. Proveer a la comunidad educativa soluciones y herramientas que contribuyan en la formación de pensamiento crítico. Estamos orgullosos de ser la única editorial guatemalteca que ha ganado licitaciones a nivel internacional en países como Chile, Venezuela, Argentina, Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, México y Panamá. Por estas y muchas razones más, nos complace ser una empresa guatemalteca comprometida, socialmente responsable y que constantemente busca la excelencia.
Desde 1947, Editorial Piedra Santa ha contribuido con la educación de niños, niñas y jóvenes, porque sabemos que con ello aportamos al desarrollo humano y también contribuimos a un mundo mejor y diferente. Son 73 años de historia en la que Editorial Piedra Santa ha venido acompañando la historia de la educación nacional, con la elaboración de materiales y herramientas didácticas para docentes y alumnos. Y hoy, más que nunca, seguimos comprometidos para el desarrollo de mejores materiales didácticos y herramientas, de la mano con nuevas estrategias educativas y con soluciones tecnológicas.
Te invitamos a visitar nuestra cadena de tiendas y nuestra tienda en línea. Piedra Santa, educando generaciones siempre.
Bienvenidos a la Cumbre de Educación 2021, Educación y Humanidad, Entender el Cambio para seguir avanzando. El día de hoy es nuestra última conferencia. Como lo hablábamos el día de ayer, es una conferencia en inglés con Robert Hill, que ha estado, pues sería la tercera vez que está en Guatemala con nosotros, hablando sobre estrategias para la enseñanza del idioma inglés, con mucho enfoque en el área de literatura. Mi experiencia como egresada pues, en un colegio donde se habla inglés como primera lengua, siempre es importante el abordaje de la literatura y cómo nosotros abordamos la lectura. Sin embargo, sí quiero hacerle un reconocimiento a Robert, puesto que él es el creador de una modalidad que se llama como una lectura expandida, ¿verdad? Donde las personas no solamente leen y comprenden el texto o dentro del texto, sino que son capaces de hacer conexiones con otros textos. Y desde que yo conocí el trabajo de Robert, pues me enamoré de su enfoque pedagógico y didáctico. Vamos a trabajar las preguntas hasta el final. Si ustedes quieren hacer preguntas en español, las pueden hacer y yo con gusto las voy a traducir. Y a lo largo de la conferencia, Robert va a estar haciendo preguntas y yo voy a ser responsable de estárselas trasladando o leyéndole a Robert para su información. También quiero comentarles que Robert, quiero agradecer en primer lugar a la editorial Vicens Vives por esta colaboración y quiero comentarles que Robert es autor de una colección de libros en inglés que se llaman World Stories. Y uno de ellos, pues Robert ya estuvo 2 veces, I think 2 times, right, Robert? En Guatemala y escribió un libro sobre el Quetzal. Y ese libro fue uno de los finalistas del premio Language Learner Literature Award. Entonces, muchas gracias, Robert. Bienvenidos. Welcome. And I hope you guys enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much, Yana. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've been in Guatemala a couple of times with great pleasure as well, with very fond memories. Just to be precise, the first book there that Yara pointed out, The Quetzal Bird and Other Stories, it's The Quetzal Bird and Other Stories. So it's a selection of 6 stories from around the world And in this case, one of the stories is The Quetzal Bird. And then the other 3 books, there are 4 books in the series, they're all collections of stories from around the world. So there are about 6 stories in each book. All right, I'm going to use one story this afternoon, and I'm going to use it to demonstrate different ways that you can use a short story in class. I'm going to show you a whole series of activities, some which will be new to you, I hope. Obviously, you don't have to use them all. It's simply a demonstration of the range of things you can do. Okay, let's see if I can share my PowerPoint with you. Are you there, Yara? If so, can you tell me if you can see my slide? Okay. Good.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, all right. So the title of this talk is Reading Stories and Making Connections. And the connections that we're going to make this afternoon, while we enjoy ourselves, I hope, with this story, are the connections between this story and other stories, between the characters inside this story, and between this story and the real world, the facts of the real world. But we'll begin with a little activity which will give you an appetite to read the story, I hope. And what we're going to look at first is the use of pictures as a pedagogical device. Now, the use of pictures with stories has been around for a long, long time in Sicily, in Italy, where I live. There's a tradition in Sicily of the cantastorie, and that is a person who travels around the villages telling stories and using pictures as an aid for comprehension and for getting people involved in the story. And right up until nowadays, in the age of comics and graphic novels, pictures are still so important in some kinds of stories. All right, now, in the story that we are going to look at this afternoon, there are just 2 pictures. And I want you to think about what order the stories are going to occur in this story. Okay, if you look at the pictures here, have a good long look at the pictures. On the left, we see a picture of a lady and a tiger. On the right, we see a lady, looks like the same lady, doesn't it? And a man. I'll say no more about it. Okay, but in this story, we have these 2 pictures. Now, do you think it's going to be Lady and the Tiger first, and then Man and the Tiger? Or do you think that it'll be the other order? That is, first of all, we're going to come across the man and the lady, and then we're going to come across the lady and the tiger. Okay, there are only 2 possibilities. There are only two pictures. And I want you to choose which you think is going to be the order in which they will occur in the story. All you have to do in the chat box, in the chat, is to write A or B. A.
Laura says it's B.
Well, let's wait a minute, please, Yara. We'll hear some more people. We'll let more people write. A, lady and tiger, and then man and lady, or B, man and lady, and then lady and tiger. Okay, wait for a few more, Yara, to come up, and then you can tell me.
Well, Laura says B. Claudia says A.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's no one else. Roblox says A.
Mm-hmm. So we got what? Okay, we got lady. We've got B, A. Come on, everybody. Nothing depends. Nobody's going to ask you any more questions than it. Yeah. No need to be shy.
Danielle says A. Carmen says A.
Looks like A is winning then. Would you say, Yara?
Donna says A.
Looks like A is the... okay.
B. I think it's B as well. I think it depends.
Okay, but I don't think it's 50. More A than B. Okay. All right, let's you can carry on writing in the chat if you want, ladies and gentlemen. But we'll move on to something else. Now, I'm talking about connections that we make unconsciously. I think that when we start reading a story, when we open a book and start a novel or start a story, we're immediately making connections. We can't help but link up to other stories that we know. Now, a woman with a wild, ferocious beast, and the more wild, the more ferocious the beast is, the better. The idea that a woman, not a man, can tame a wild beast is a motif in a story that we find around the world. In Europe, there's the tradition, there's the legend that it takes a virgin, more than just a woman, a virgin, to tame a unicorn. And all through the centuries, I think, stories where a massive wild beast has been tamed by falling in love with a young woman, and you can see King Kong on the screen. They're common. This motif is common, and I'm just wondering to what extent you might have been influenced by other stories that you know. On the screen at the moment, you can see Our Lady and the tiger, and on the right, well, I think you recognize that what story that is. I think there it looks quite similar, doesn't it? It looks really quite similar. I think here you can recognize the story of
Beauty
waiting for it to come. Yeah. Beauty and the Beast. There it is. It's on the screen now. Beauty and the Beast. Now, Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is in fact a human being, a man who has been transformed into a beast. It's a curse, and only when he finds the love of a good woman can he return to being a real man. It's a question of metamorphosis, which is found in so many stories. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm interested in your opinion again. When you were looking at the pictures of our story, the lady and the tiger, did you think it was just a tiger? Or did you think that it was a man or something else transformed into a tiger? If you think it was a question of transformation, write yes. If you think that was just a tiger and not a human being, write no. Okay, off you go. I'm interested, very interested in your opinions. Okay.
People have said no.
We'll be using the chat quite a lot this afternoon. So
Roblo says yes. I think no is winning.
That it's just a tiger and not a man transformed. Okay. Oh, but at the last minute, can I see, Yara, a couple of yes votes?
Two yes votes. 3. They are tied.
Okay. All right.
Now it's yes one.
All right. Well, do continue writing. Now, that would be a question of bringing our knowledge of other stories to this new story, and unconsciously, inevitably, making connections between the new story and other stories we have read. I think, and it seems to be inevitable, that we bring our experience of the world, of real life, to stories that we read as well. Now, in the bottom left-hand side, down here, you can see it's our picture of the man and the woman. Now, I don't want to interpret too much, but she doesn't seem happy, and he seems tense. Have they argued? Do men and women argue in a different way? Is one noisier than the other? Is it the man or the woman who has recourse to silence? I don't know. A lot of cultural baggage about this. Listen, use the chat box now, please. Not just for simple A or B or yes or no, but write down some ideas about if they have been arguing, what do you think they might have argued about? What do you think they might have argued about? I'm very curious. Please, right away.
Let's see if someone answers.
I hope so, Yara. I'm looking forward to it.
Patricia is saying that they're arguing because of stress.
And I wonder what caused the stress.
About being unfaithful.
Oh my goodness, the big one.
Really, she's talking about the one where the woman looks like she's yelling, right? And the guy's like, oh, no more. Roblox is saying it's about economy.
Oh, right. Household expenses. Yeah, household expenses. Yeah.
About a trip of a child that wasn't approved by both.
Okay, well, we will
The man
find
loves
out.
to work.
Okay, so like domestic issues.
Money.
Money, money, money.
Betrayal, money.
Okay,
Power
so
struggle.
domestic issues. Okay, now you will find out. I'm going to finish now with talking about these pictures, but I do want to underline how excellent pictures are for use before the learners read a story. Why? Because if you ask students to do what I've just done, which is put them in an order in which you think they would occur, then inevitably, students will be inventing a kind of narrative. Inevitably, when you think first that picture and then that picture, already you're creating in your head a plot, what happens. And I firmly believe that if you have created in your head your own idea of a plot, then you'll have an appetite to read the story and find out if your idea is the same as, similar to, completely different from the story in the book. Okay, right, now it's time to look at the story. Now, the complete story is available in the handouts, in the link to material that you're going to find in the chat. You don't need it now because I'm going to read the story for you now. But if you like the story, and I hope you do, and you want to take it away with you, then you will find the link in the chat, or at the end of this this session together, you can ask again about where to get the story from. Okay, so I'll read the story, and it'll take 8 minutes. I know that because I've practiced it in private many times. I've cut off the beginning. I'll tell you what happens. It's about a woman called Yunok who was happily married, and then her husband had to go away to war. He was away for over 2 years, and she was waiting for him. And now we'll join the story. Okay, as I said, don't worry, you'll get the story if you like it, but for the moment, just follow the words as I read. One day, when she came home from working in the fields, he was there. She ran up to him and hugged him. "I'm so happy to see you," she said. "Come in and sit down. Tell me where you've been and what you've seen. Tell me everything." But her husband didn't seem very pleased to see her again. "I don't want to talk about it," he said angrily, and he pulled himself free from her arms and walked into the house. During the following weeks, Yun-ok did everything she could to make her husband happy. She cooked his favorite food, but he didn't eat it. She asked him to sit with her and watch the sun go down, but he stayed in the house. Finally, she got angry with him. "What's wrong with you?" she shouted. "Tell me!" He looked at her sadly. "I can't," he said. Then she started to worry about him. She asked her neighbors for their advice, but they didn't know what to tell her. Finally, one morning, she decided to go and see a wise old man who lived in the forest. People said that his potions could cure everything. She didn't believe this, but she was desperate. The journey to his hut was long and difficult, but eventually she found it. "How can I help you?" he asked, without even looking up. Yun Ok explained the problem. "Ah, yes," the old man said. "Men often behave like that when they come back from a war. What do you want me to do?" "Give me a potion," Yun Ok said. "Something that will change him. I want him to be the man I married." "I have potions for headaches and fevers," the old man replied, "but I don't have the one you want. I must think about it. Go away and come back in 3 days." So Yun Ok went home and returned 3 days later. This time, the old man greeted her with a smile. "I have good news," he said. "I can make a potion for you." Yun Ok smiled too now. "But," said the old man, "I don't have the most important ingredient, and it's very difficult to get." "I'll get it for you," said Yun Ok. "What is it?" "A whisker from a live tiger." Yun Ok was shocked. "A whisker from a live tiger," she repeated. "But that's impossible." "I can't make the potion without it," the old man said, a little impatiently. Yun Ok stood up and walked away. On the way home, she thought about what she could do. The next day, she got up before dawn. Her husband was still asleep. She crept quietly into the kitchen and put some rice and meat sauce into a bowl. Then she covered the bowl with a cloth and set off for the mountains. Everyone in the village knew that a tiger lived there. She was going to look for its cave. After walking for many hours, she finally found it. The tiger was asleep inside. She could see its large head in the entrance. She put the bowl down on the ground and crept away. The next day she returned to the cave with another bowl of rice and meat sauce. The one from yesterday was empty. She picked it up and put down the full one. She continued to leave bowls of food outside the cave for several months. She knew that the tiger was eating it because its footprints were there, but she never saw the tiger. Then, one day, it was standing in the entrance to the cave when she arrived. She felt very afraid, but she didn't run away. She picked up the empty bowl as calmly as she could, put down the full one, and moved quietly away. After that, she saw the tiger every day. A month passed. The tiger started to come out of the cave when it heard her footsteps. It didn't come up to her, she was glad about that, but stayed a little distance away. "I'll have to get it near it one day soon, though," she thought, trembling with fear. Another month passed. Now the tiger was waiting next to the empty bowl when she arrived. It was so close to her that she could smell its tiger scent. She looked at its large head. "It's got a very sweet face," she thought. A week later, she felt brave enough to touch its head gently with her fingers. Said the tiger, and it lay down next to her. The next morning, she put a small knife in her pocket before she set off to go and see the tiger. As usual, she put down the full bowl of food and the tiger ate it. Then it lay down next to her and allowed her to stroke its head. "Tiger," she said to it softly, "do you mind if I take one of your whiskers? I won't hurt you, I promise." And she very gently cut off one of the tiger's long whiskers. The tiger continued purring. Yun Ok stood up and walked away. The next morning, she went to the old man's hut. She was holding the precious whisker in her hand. "Look," she said when she saw the old man. "I have it. I have the tiger's whisker." "Really?" he said. He was very surprised. "From a live tiger?" "Yes," she said. "Tell me," said the old man, "how did you get it?" Yun Ok told the man about the bowls of food and her visits to the tiger's cave. "It took 6 months to win its trust," she said, proudly, "but I did it. And in the end, it allowed me to take a whisker." She gave the old man the whisker. He looked at it carefully for a few minutes and then threw it on the fire. It burnt immediately. Yun Ok was shocked. "How will you make the potion without the whisker?" she asked, tears running down her face. "Yun Ok," the old man said softly, "you don't need a potion. You already have what you need to heal your husband." "Do I?" asked Yun Ok. "What is that?" "Tell me," said the old man, "is a man very different from a tiger? You won the trust of a dangerous wild animal with patience and love. Now use the same patience and love with your husband. Go, he's waiting for you." Yun Ok turned around slowly and walked home. She repeated the old man's words in her head. By the time she arrived, she knew what she had to do. Well, that's the end of the story. I wonder if you feel like it, in the chat, you could simply write in a few words your reaction, whether you liked it, you didn't like it, whatever you like. I'll give you a minute, if you want, to write down your first reaction, your immediate reaction. Yara, what are people thinking?
That it's a beautiful story. They loved it. Someone is reflecting and saying that you need patience for everything you do in life.
Ah, interesting.
It's a love story. Great.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you like the story.
Important.
All right. I wonder where this story is from. I'm going to tell you at the very end. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, making connections with other stories. Now, I said that when we step into a new story, we step into a world of connections, I think. An important motif in this story is the impossible task or impossible job, or at least a task that seems impossible, but our heroine manages to do it. From all over the world, from all the stories you've read or had read to you or you've seen, can you think of any other stories that that are based on or include an impossible seeming task that our hero or heroine has to do? So continue using the chat. Because you're getting used to using the chat now. Fantastic. Any other stories you know which contain an impossible or seemingly impossible task to do?
I think they didn't understand the question.
Yeah. Are there any other folk stories or myths or legends that you know where there's an impossible task or a task that seems impossible that a protagonist or our hero or heroine has to do? I don't want to block you if it's not clear what I'm after. I'll write some. I'll show you some of my ideas. Yeah, Alice in Wonderland is full of impossible things.
Yes, Alice in Wonderland said one.
Yeah.
Myths, I would say. Well,
here's some I put on the screen. Well, Hercules or Heracles.
The Lion and the Mice.
He has 12 impossible jobs to accomplish. There's also the Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche, where Psyche is a mortal girl and she falls in love with the god Cupid, and the mother of Cupid, Venus, is so jealous that she sets Psyche all these difficult jobs to do, like sorting out corn into 2 different piles. Or those are from Greek mythology. From Northern Europe, like the fairy tales of Grimm, we've got Rumpelstiltskin, if you remember that horrible little man who says, "You will never guess my name." Cinderella is asked by her stepmother to sort out peas and lentils and corn and to clean the house. There's the Russian stories of the brave little girl called Vasilisa and the horrible witch Baba Yaga. She's a horrible, horrible witch. She's got a house on chicken legs and her teeth are made of iron, very frightening. And she gives Vasilisa a task to do. From Guyana in the Caribbean, we have the story of Maconaura and Anuanaitu. In folk stories around the world, there are the motif of the impossible job. And often, bless you, Yara, often our heroine is helped by an animal. In this case, the tiger doesn't really help. It's an interesting character, the tiger. However, this kind of connection, I don't ask students because they haven't done much reading yet at their stage. All of these ideas are in the teacher's book for the teachers. By the way, the teacher's book are very full. They tell you all of this background information. Here is another way of seeing if stories are similar. Now, in the history of stories from the time of Aesop, the Greek writer or teller of fables, right up to nowadays, morals have been important at the end of stories. What kind of lesson for life does the story teach us? Now, again, I'm interested in what you will write in the chat box. I've invented, me personally, the story doesn't come with a moral. I've invented 4 morals for the story, A, B, C, D. Patience will get you what you want. Love is all you need. No creature is completely wild. Never give up. Or maybe those choices will stimulate you to write your own idea. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the chat, which moral do you think best comes out of the story? A, B, C, D? Or if you like, write your own moral. Okay, I'm interested.
B.
Uh-huh.
A.
So what's winning, Yara? A, B, C, D?
B is winning.
And are there any original?
There's one D. There's one D.
Okay. Are there any original ideas for morals?
No.
Not my choice, A, B, C, D, but any...
Well, someone said, Daniel is writing, the woman is the one that understands and builds values.
Uh-huh.
The train of joy.
That's enigmatic. Love train. All right. Now, the thing with Proverbs is the more general they are, the more they could apply to many stories. If you look at B, which I understand several of our teachers have chosen, Love is All You Need, Beatles song from 1968, I think, 67. Love is All You Need could apply to so many stories, couldn't it? It doesn't mean it's a bad moral at all, but it doesn't distinguish our story from other stories. Anyway, I quite like working with morals, but now we're going to go into what I think is a very interesting area. Here I want to start exploring how we can make connections between the characters in the story to find out more about the characters in the story, and to make our learners interpret the characters and be creative. Now, a feature of myths and legends and folk tales is that the characters are not very fully developed. I mean, we don't know much about them. We may get a few adjectives like brave or beautiful, but that's it for characterization. I mean, they're certainly not like from Shakespeare plays or Dickens novels. They are very black and white characters. But if we want to explore their feelings more, let's consider just a couple of tools. And one tool, one instrument I'm very fond of is the diary. To get our learners to write some entries in the diaries of the main characters. Now, diaries are really advantageous for us teachers. Why? Because the convention is that in a diary, characters tell the truth. In fiction, and I suspect in life, but of course I don't know, but certainly in fiction, when somebody writes a diary, they write the truth. A diary entry is not restricted to just the events of today. People can wonder about the future, and people can regret the past. You know, it spreads out over time. Diaries are written in the first person and not the third person. This makes them more immediate, more dramatic. I. You get your learners to enter under the skin of the characters. And the more a text is simple and doesn't tell us very much about the character, the more the diary is going to allow us to flesh out, to give a personality, to give thoughts and feelings to a character. Maybe, if you look at my last point down there, even contradicting or subverting the text. Maybe, who knows, in her diary, Eunoch talks about how she is depressed, angry, dislikes her husband. Who knows? And here, in your material that you will get, the material that you will get, you'll see my notes from this PowerPoint presentation. If you choose any of these moments, like while her husband's at war, the day he comes back, the week after he comes back, when she starts going to the tiger, what her husband is like in the evening, what happens after she's finished meeting the wise man. These moments are going to show very different feelings of frustration, despair, fear, and hope. Writing the entries in diaries is a great way of getting under the skin of characters. Now, Eunoch is the main character. She's the one that we are told about. She's the one whose thoughts the narrator shares with us. Look at these other characters. They may be important, they may be less important, but we don't hear their voices. There's the husband who just says, I think in the story, one thing. He says, I can't talk about what happened in the war. There's the wise man who, like wise men, is rather enigmatic. There's the tiger, and I'm not joking. I'm not joking. There's the tiger who doesn't say anything in the story. There's the neighbors. They're minor characters, but they, in real life, they would have opinions. They're just in one sentence in the story. Now, These four characters or groups of characters, the husband, the wise man, the tiger, the neighbors, ladies and gentlemen, which of those four would you like to explore most? Which character would you like to discover more about? Just write A or B or C or D in the chat, please.
A is the winner, I think.
A is the winner. Now, I noticed that in the chat, a colleague wrote the husband is passive, too passive. This is where, by writing a diary entry, you can turn a passive character into an active character. You can show that what she is thinking is quite different from his or her behavior in the story. For the husband, I would recommend the same procedure, that is a diary. And as a way of getting under the skin of the character. It's interesting. Like when Yunok starts going to the tiger and she's away most of the day, I presume that Yunok hasn't told her husband that she's going to a tiger. Where does he think she's going? To see another man? How does he feel about that? Well, these are things that the story doesn't tell us, but which are maybe even more interesting to explore. That is what the story doesn't tell us. Okay, moving on to the wise man. The wise man says a few things to Yunok. He says important things, like his last message to Yunok, go home, your husband is waiting for you. But what is he thinking? There are moments like when Yunok first arrives and tells him about her husband. Does he think that it's, yes, another of these cases? He seems genuinely surprised when Yunok shows him the tiger's whisker. What does he think when she leaves to go back to her husband? Does he think that she will be successful or not? Now, when you examine what somebody is thinking in a story or a play, not what they are saying, what they are thinking, which might be different to what they are saying. In drama, this activity is called thought tracking. That is, imagining what somebody is thinking at the moment that they are speaking. You can elicit in different ways. You could draw a thought bubble like in cartoons and ask students to write what the character is thinking. Or you could use hot seating and get the character to sit on a chair, and then the rest of the class asks him or her questions about what they are thinking. Okay, we'll move on to the tiger. Now, I've not gone crazy here. I really am proposing that we might think about what the tiger is thinking. Folk tales are full of anthropomorphic animals, animals that think and speak. What is the tiger thinking? If it were thinking anthropomorphically as a person, would it be thinking something about Yun Ok? And if you really want to be ambitious stylistically, perhaps students could write what the tiger thinks in a kind of tiger style. Think about it. How might an animal think? How might a tiger think? And finally, for the moment, the neighbors, who only have a sentence in the story. If you look at the second half of my slide here, you could imagine that the neighbors are, well, all the same as each other, or they've all got different personalities, that they are gossipy and malicious about Yun Ok, or they are on the side of Yun Ok, or they are on the side of the husband. You know what neighbors are like. You know what neighbors are like. You might want, to role play the neighbors gossiping about Yun Ok and her husband. Now, having looked at the activities, using the diary to get into the skin of the husband, or examining the thoughts of the wise man and the tiger, role-playing maybe the neighbors, I wonder if you change your mind, whether you think that A or B or C or D is a more interesting character to explore in the story. So if you've changed your mind, if you thought that A, the husband, was the most important, most interesting person to explore, if you change your mind, write it in the chat. If you haven't changed your mind, don't write it in the chat. Anything happening, Yara, in the chat?
Just two answers, B and Z. Lara is saying, make students go the extra mile.
What does she mean by that, I wonder? Make them work harder, make them interpret more.
Probably, yeah. Think more, right? Deeper.
Yeah. A simple story does not exclude deep thinking. On the contrary, we've got more work to do, more interesting work. Does anybody think the tiger is an interesting character to explore?
Just two people.
Okay. Maybe the tiger's had other...
2 out of 5. 2 out of 5.
Maybe the tiger has had other customers who've come for a whisker. Don't know. Aha, okay. I'm glad you are finding this interesting. I'm finding it very interesting to making connections. Yara, I'm going to be another 5 minutes. Okay, I know I've got a clock here. Don't worry. I know I've got to finish, but I'll need another 5 minutes. We've looked at characters who are like important in the story, but don't have a voice. The husband. Midway characters, the wise man, and characters who are minimally in the story, like the neighbors. How about characters who are not in the story at all, but that we might want to invite into the story? We might want to include into the story. Can you write your ideas in the chat box, in the chat? Any characters who are not in the story, but you think would be interesting to hear what they think, to listen to what they say.
The woman's family.
Uh-huh. Her mom, her dad, yeah. Sisters, aunts, uncles, yeah.
Soldiers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Her mother, especially her mother.
Ah. I think we're saying the same thing. I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, I've thought about it much longer than you. So I've come up with a few more ideas. That's not surprising. I've been working with this story. I was thinking of relatives, yeah, relatives of her family, his family. Children are not mentioned in the story at all. I mean, perhaps they don't have any children. Perhaps they don't have any children now. Mystery, like Lady Macbeth. Friends, comrades from the war. Yeah, somebody said soldiers. I think you said Yara.
Yes.
Yeah, his comrades from the war. Lovers. Oh, question mark, question mark, question mark. Has there been another man for Yun Ok while the husband has been away? Has the husband had an affair while he's been in the army? This is really, now we're really being very ambitious with the story, and we can create letters between these characters. Letters are like dialogues. Diary entries are like monologues. The letters, if they're answered, kind of like written dialogues, or we can have role play. I won't be long now, Yara, don't worry. But it's very interesting, this area of exploring what's not in the story.
Do they have children?
Well, yeah. They're not mentioned in the story at all, are they?
Wife,
I don't know.
A.
And further connections, scenes which are not in the story, which could be with characters who are already there, or characters who are not there, like friends, like family. Well, I'll give you one more idea, because I want to ask you something a bit more demanding. Okay, now, it seems to me like a week after the story finishes, a kind of sequel, it would be interesting to know if Yun Ok and her husband are building a relationship or no. You could imagine the wise man with a young disciple, and the young disciple constantly asks the wise man why he's doing what he does. I mean, why the wise man didn't say straight away, Yun Ok, you need to be patient with your husband. Or this is what interesting me at the moment, an ex-comrade from the war turns up, arrives at Yun Ok's home. There, what a surprising event. And what might happen in that scene? Okay, do please write in the chat. Okay, an ex-comrade, a man who was in the war with Yun Ok's husband, just turns up out of the blue at their village. How might that develop?
A. Lily is saying A.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting thing to explore. Like, yes, will things be better? Or I mean, you could imagine a year from now, 5 years from now. I mean, a sequel can be at any time in the future. But I'm wondering what happens when an ex-comrade arrives at Eunoch's and her husband's home. Well, I put this down as an example of where the story might take us in really quite a different direction to what's in the story. Maybe an ex-comrade turns up at Eunoch's home, and during the war, he witnessed that the husband was extremely brave, or cowardly, or savage, and he has some information that we don't know. Maybe he speaks to the husband and tries to console him, or maybe he speaks to Eunoch and tells him what her husband was like. Maybe he's there to blackmail them. I don't know. All of this is a spin-off, something generated by the story, but not in the story at all. Okay, and in a couple of minutes, I promise to finish and leave plenty of time for questions. When we change a story, the term we use nowadays is text intervention. Text intervention. That means we change the story. Look at these three events here. We might imagine any of these three. Eunoch returns home one evening and her husband is gone. What happens next? Eunoch goes to the cave one morning and the tiger isn't there. What happens next? At the last moment, Eunoch just doesn't dare cut off one of the tiger's whiskers. What happens next? Now, there is no need to use a complex structure like the third conditional to talk about it. No need to say, if Eunoch had returned home one evening and her husband had left, she would have felt. You don't need to. You can just continue in the present simple, a synopsis, or what's called a treatment in the world of cinema. Just the story in the plain present simple. Eunoch returns home one evening and her husband isn't there. At first, she feels desperate, but blah, 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 blah. That's called text intervention. You choose a moment and you change the story. Or we might intervene in the text and make a change of characters. Like if we changed the wise man into a wise woman, how would that affect the story? This is a sophisticated question, isn't it? Would she give the same advice? I wonder. All right. Now I can reveal to you. It's a story from Korea. I don't know if any of you might have guessed that, but Korea, where the tiger is very important in the national identity and national culture. There, I don't know. Maybe it's the first time for you. You've come across a story from Korea. I thought it'd be interesting to do something brand new. Okay. I don't know, Yara, if the link to the material and the link to the website about the books, I don't know if that is there. But now, anyway, I'm open for questions. Any questions that I invite our teachers to write in the chat. I'll answer, or try to answer. By the way, that story is one of the stories in that book. There are 6 stories in that book, or 5. 6 stories, and that's one of the stories in that book, The Woman and the Tiger. It's the leading story, the one we've chosen. They come with activities, but just a few sexy activities. What I've done in my session with you is to give you lots of activities to show how you can create extra activities by imagining the diaries of characters, the diaries of major characters, the diaries of minor characters, and by thinking of characters who are not even in the story and exploring them. So, okay.
Okay, so Daniel is asking, what do you think of the use of questions during reading?
Okay, so-called while reading questions. Yeah, good question. And it's a decision, I think, that the teacher makes given the class or individuals that she has in front of her. They're good for 2 reasons. Primarily, to engage students in predicting what will happen next. And it's not by accident that thrillers are sometimes called page turners. And they're called that because it really makes you want to turn over the page. I think when you're reading, you're always thinking what happens next. Always you're thinking what happens next. So a while reading question is designed to make you think what happens next. Secondly, it can be to check that everybody's understood the same surface meaning of what has already happened. So they are a good thing. However, teacher knows best. So if you see your class in front of you is eager to continue reading, then don't stop the story. If they really are, you can see their faces, would resent stopping and talking, then don't do it. Personally, in this particular material that I've created, I've put in the longer stories 2 or 3 while you read questions to encourage prediction, which are entirely optional. That's the way I like to think about it.
Okay, thank you. Danielle also is asking, how much do you think reading influences creative writing?
How much does reading affect creative writing?
Mm-hmm.
Lots, lots, unconsciously. I think all great writers agree that you are influenced by what you've read. I think it was either Coleridge or Wordsworth, one of those 2 romantic poets, who recommended, in a very strange phrase nowadays, continuous intercourse with the best models. Continuous intercourse with the best models, by which he meant reading lots of good material. But if I can use another quotation from King Lear, what he says to Cordelia, he says, "Nothing will come of nothing." So you have to have input before you have output. So I think the activities that we've looked at this afternoon stimulate students to write. I mean, what anguish is the husband going through? What did he experience in the war? Well, there's your diary. You can, the teacher, add the first sentence of a diary, if you like another sleepless night, the same old nightmares. Wow. And there's an invitation, isn't it, to write dramatically about what the poor man suffered in the war. Writing will be generated by creative writing will be generated by reading. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
Okay. Also, how can a teacher prepare powerful reading questions?
Well, my book is full of them. But then again, I would say that. No, really, seriously, there are some in my book, and the teacher's book has many extra suggestions. That said, I don't know if the person asking is talking about pre-reading questions or after reading questions. If it's pre-reading questions, generally illustrations, what do you think is going on, or take a sentence from anywhere in the story, not the first sentence, but from anywhere in the story, and ask students what they think leads up to this sentence. That's a very quick answer, because we could do a whole session on pre-reading questions. For after-reading questions, a powerful question, I don't think there is one question which is valid for all kinds of reading texts. For folkloric stories or myths or legends, which are very sparing, very, very light on characterization, I think questions asking students to imagine how the characters are feeling, and they are more powerful if they are done in the first person, because if they're done in the third person, it's more like an essay. Examine how Hamlet feels at the beginning of Act 3. Okay, it's a good academic question, but if you say you are name of a character, you are writing a diary, you are talking to a friend, you are thinking, you are wondering, how are you feeling? And I think that is a powerful kind of activity creator.
Okay, thank you. And Laura's asking, can we use these activities with small kids?
Yes, I mean, yes. Once they get used to it. I mean, I've seen some good diary entries from young kids, even for simplified Shakespeare stories. Once again, your students, your learners, so you will know the kind of thing that works best with them. That said, it's often only when you do a kind of activity for the second or the third or the fourth time that it pays dividends. The first time you get it's often not very successful because students are getting used to what they have to do. So with patience, yes, you could use these activities with kids from, I would say, 8 years up.
Okay, thank you. And
to give an accurate.
Okay, sorry. Carmen is asking, how can you control time from question to question? And
How can I control?
Yes, and how can you make like a group that is shy, how to make it more participative?
Participatory is a difficult
Yeah.
word. How can you encourage participation? With shy students, well, if it's a case of dramatization or role play or entering into the character of somebody, then it's not necessary to do those rather threatening dramatic activity types like standing up at the front of the class. Students can take on role play equally while sitting down, maybe in groups, practicing a role play first and then doing it. Sitting down in groups, that's less threatening, much less threatening than being obliged to come to the front of the class and stand up and perform. Yeah. Students who are already dramatic students will enjoy that, but that's one thing for facilitating activities for the shy student, is not to insist upon the demonstrative, ostentatious kind of activities that involve standing up and running around and acting. It can be done from, you just change the seating a little bit. Anything else, Yara?
And then what are the advantages of fiction stories?
What are the advantages of non-fiction stories or fiction stories?
Fiction stories.
Fiction stories.
Yes.
Well, fiction, human beings tell stories. I know that informative texts and non-informative texts are rather different, but often when we want to teach a lesson, a life lesson, okay, or communicate something important about ourselves, we tell it in the form of a story. And we've done that, I think, since the beginning of time. We've told things through narration. There's no point in saying which kind of text is better. They are different, and they have different functions. But stories are part of our DNA. We are storytelling animals.
Okay, so this is a question for me. Well, the title was about making connections, right? And it's very interesting to make connections with other stories and between the characters. But how about making connections with the real world? What do you think of that?
The real world things. Well, if I can make reference to my material, simply because it's material that I've created and I know very well. In this story that we've read together, The Woman and the Tiger, I think there are three connections with the real world that are important. This post-traumatic stress disorder, it's only been recently named. It used to be called shell shock in the First World War, but quite clearly the husband is suffering from that. Or there's the whole question of Korea, as this story makes us think about post-traumatic stress disorder. It makes us think about Korea, perhaps to a lesser extent. It certainly makes me think about tigers. So what my wife and I do with these stories is that after a while we make connections with the real world. So there will be a little article on tigers, tigers in history, tigers in as you know, as animals, as real life animals. And the way I do this, and somebody asked about informative texts and fictional texts. Somebody asked about how to make powerful questions. Well, now with a non-fiction text, an informative text, a good way, a powerful way of encouraging reading is to ask students some true, false questions before they read the text. So then they read the text with an appetite which is far greater than if they had not done these true, false questions. It's a kind of activity associated with content and language integrated learning, and it's called KWL. First of all, you ask students to identify what they know, that's the K, what they want to know, that's the W, and what they have learned once you show them the text. So ladies and gentlemen, if I show you these very rapidly, don't worry, we'll be finishing very soon. If I show you these statements about tigers, and you can write in the chat if you like, if you haven't got time, because I'm rushing you.
Can you repeat the 3W, the 3K or 3W, what they know? What they know,
what they want to know, and what they have learned, KWL, KWL. So here are some statements about tigers. Ladies and gentlemen, A close relative of the modern tiger lived in China about 10,000 years ago. True, false, or you don't know? Oh, I should be, right, okay. Sharing screen here. An adult Amur or Siberian tiger can weigh up to 300 kilograms. Tigers are good swimmers. True or false? You can be thinking, ladies and gentlemen, all tigers have the same pattern of stripes. Tigers usually hunt at night. Tigers eat birds and fish. In the last 500 years, tigers have eaten over 1,000 people. Korea is home to many Amur tigers. The tiger is a popular subject of Korean painting. The body parts of tigers are used in traditional medicines. Okay, now, I'm asking you to write true or false or don't know, but I'm suggesting you don't write don't know, that you really make an educated guess. And I'm hoping that you would be very curious now to read an article about tigers that searches for those answers. My strategy here, is to not to use true false questions for comprehension, but for motivation to read. In American pedagogical terms, these are not thick questions. They are not questions which ask the student to read and digest several paragraphs. They are thin questions. That is, you are simply looking for the sentence where it says the answer. The answer is right there in the text. Find the sentence where it says that. Now, I'll make it easy for you. I'll show you the text. Eventually it will appear on your screen, where I have marked in yellow the phrases which tell you the answer. So, gosh, it lived in Northwest China about 2 million years ago. They can weigh up to 300 kilograms, big boys and girls, very good swimmers, so they can swim. No two tigers have the same pattern of stripes. Gosh, it's like fingerprints for human beings. They should be coming up on your screen anytime soon. They usually hunt at night. They eat all kinds of mammals. Good God, they've killed, well, 500 years is a long time. But in that time, they've killed over 1 million people. In Korea, there are no Amur tigers left. They are indeed an endangered species. Endangered in part because in some Oriental countries, particularly the Chinese, think they are potent in medicine, alas. Anyway, so well after the story, we also input these factual articles which are inspired by the story. I mean, reading that story, it's inevitable that one's curiosity is stimulated about tigers. In the chat, I see that you wrote the 3 W's, Yara. It's not. It's W, K, and no, KWL. What you know, what you want to know, and what you have learned. Those are the 3 phases of looking at non-fiction article. That particular article and the activities are also in the handout that should be in the chat.
Robert,
Yes.
People are saying that they try to get into the link you gave us, but they need permission. They need you to allow them.
Okay. Now, I don't know that. How can we do this? How can we do this? So listen, I'm just suggesting this to you, Yara, and to the teachers. How about if when we finish, I send you the 3 documents.
Okay.
Not as a link, but as documents, and you somehow arrange for the teachers to get them. Is that possible?
Yes. Lo que vamos a hacer con Robert es que él nos va a mandar los documentos y una vez ya tengamos los documentos, yo les voy a pedir que escriban a mercadeo@piedrasanta.com para que les podamos reenviar esos documentos a ustedes. Lo que necesitamos es que nos soliciten los documentos de la conferencia de Robert Hill y con eso estaríamos enviándoles los distintos materiales que él nos va a entregar.
Is that okay?
Yes,
there's also a link to the Vicens Vives website where these books you can look at chapters from these books. You can have samples from the books. It's a very good link. So I'll send. I don't know if that is in the. Yes, thank you. Yes, I can see it. Yes, it's just there. Okay, that's a great link, and I will send you the three. There's 2 PDFs and a Word document, and as soon as we finish, I'll send you the 3 separate ones. Not as a place in my cloud, but as 3 physical documents. And anything else I can help you with also, do ask me.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
That's my pleasure. I wish I was physically there in Guatemala, Yana. Did I see that there was somebody from Argentina?
Yes, there was someone from, I don't know if she's still there. There was someone from Argentina. She's been receiving the workshops every day. Mm-hmm. And then people from Guatemala, Honduras. So, yes.
Okay. I'm going to, wait a minute. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I can see us, I think, there. Okay,
yes.
So once again, thank you ever so much for hosting me. And it was great fun. Next time in your en Guatemala.
Bueno, muchas gracias a ustedes por la participación. Esta es la última conferencia de la cumbre. Esperamos que haya sido un espacio de reflexión, de intercambio de ideas. Pues introdujimos 2 temas en inglés que esperamos haya sido de utilidad. Y Robert, thanks a lot for all your excellent ideas on reading and making reading not only fun, but also interesting.
Edutainment. Yeah, education and entertainment. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Okay, have a good afternoon.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Adiós, buenas. Chao.
Somos Editorial y Librerías Piedra Santa, 5 generaciones contribuyendo a la educación y formación docente en Guatemala. Fundado en 1947 por Julio y Oralia Piedra Santa, pioneros en la elaboración de material didáctico bajo las técnicas de aprendizaje más innovadoras, según las exigencias de cada época. Somos una editorial 100% guatemalteca reconocida a nivel internacional, que ha publicado textos escolares, obras de literatura infantil, juvenil y para adultos, apoyando siempre a los autores guatemaltecos y centroamericanos. Dentro de nuestros servicios podemos destacar editorial, canal de librerías, distribución y venta de libros de texto a centros educativos y puntos de venta, edición, diseño y diagramación de libros, servicios generales de impresión, offset y digital. Y de la mano con la tecnología, apoyamos al docente por medio de sistemas avanzados como lo son Link Learning y nuestro software propio, Crocs. Nuestro compromiso es incidir en la transformación de la sociedad a través de productos y servicios de calidad, entre los que destacan libros educativos, talleres y conferencias impartidos por destacados profesionales nacionales e internacionales. Proveer a la comunidad educativa soluciones y herramientas que contribuyan en la formación de pensamiento crítico. Estamos orgullosos de ser la única editorial guatemalteca que ha ganado licitaciones a nivel internacional en países como Chile, Venezuela, Argentina, Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, México y Panamá. Por estas y muchas razones más, nos complace ser una empresa guatemalteca comprometida, socialmente responsable y que constantemente busca la excelencia.
Desde 1947, Editorial Piedra Santa ha contribuido con la educación de niños, niñas y jóvenes, porque sabemos que con ello aportamos al desarrollo humano y también contribuimos a un mundo mejor y diferente. Son 73 años de historia en la que Editorial Piedrasanta ha venido acompañando la historia de la educación nacional, con la elaboración de materiales y herramientas didácticas para docentes y alumnos. Y hoy, más que nunca, seguimos comprometidos para el desarrollo de mejores materiales didácticos y herramientas, de la mano con nuevas estrategias educativas y con soluciones tecnológicas.
Te invitamos a visitar nuestra cadena de tiendas y nuestra tienda en línea. Piedrasanta, educando generaciones siempre.